The May 12th Executive Committee meeting is called to order. First, I'd like to ask Carlos to explain how access interpretation is going to work. Carlos.
Thank you, Chair Vargas. I will begin with the instructions in Spanish and I will be back with the instructions in English. Muy buenos días. Estoy ofreciendo interpretación simultánea para esta sesión. Si nos acompaña vía Zoom para hacer uso del servicio, por favor desplácese a la barra de controles. Ahí verá un icono que parece un globito terráqueo y seleccionaría Spanish o español. Si nos acompaña a través de la aplicación móvil de Zoom, presionaría los puntos suspensivos o más, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Por último, si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, seleccione Mute Original Audio o silenciar audio original. Ahora, good morning. Interpretation is being provided to and from Spanish. For those of you joining us via Zoom, please scroll down to the bottom of the Zoom screen where the meeting controls are. There, click on the interpretation icon. It looks like a little world, and then select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app, you would press the ellipsis, the three dots, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Si nos acompaña presencialmente en la sala de juntas y necesita interpretación al español, por favor diríjase a la recepción del piso 7 y solicite un receptor. Este parece un pequeño iPod y se puede usar para escuchar la reunión en español. Simplemente sostenga el auricular junto a su oído y la interpretación comenzará automáticamente. If you're joining us today at SANDAG and need interpretation into English, please check out a headset from the receptionist on the 7th floor. The headset looks like a little iPod and comes with an earpiece which you can use to hear any Spanish comments or questions translated back into English. Simply hold the earpiece to your ear and the interpreter will come on automatically. Gracias and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Carlos. Muchas gracias. I'm going to start this meeting with a tribal acknowledgement. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the land that we call home. The tribal nations of the San Diego region have historically faced injustices, and we acknowledge the harmony that existed between the land, nature, and its original peoples who have since endured displacement, persecution, and systemic oppression. We pay our respect to the unceded territory and homelands of the 18 tribal nations in our region, the most in any county in the United States, from our 4 cultural groups, the Kumeyaay, the Guiño, the Luiseño, the Cupeño, and the Cahuilla. This land has nourished, healed, protected, and embraced them for many generations in a relationship of balance and harmony. As members of the SANDAG community, we acknowledge this legacy. We aspire to learn from Indigenous traditional knowledge and experience and undo the injustices of the past. Now, if you will please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tessa, can you please take roll?
Good morning. For the City of San Diego, Vice Chair Elo Rivera. For the County of San Diego, Chair Vargas. For East County, Mayor Vasquez. Here. For North County Coastal, Second Vice Chair Hebner. Present. For North County Inland, Mayor Jones. Here. And Mayor Voss. For South County, Councilmember Cardenas. Present. And our ex officio members present, Deputy Mayor Zito.
Present.
And Councilmember Shu.
Here.
And that concludes the roll call.
Thank you. With that, we're going to go ahead and begin today's meeting with non-agenda public comment. This is for the public and member non-agenda comment, public comments. Go ahead.
We have 3 public commenters for non-agenda. The first is Mary Davis, who will be followed by Timothy Bilash.
Hi, good morning. Just a quick thing. The May 5th meeting, the regional plan meeting had gotten canceled, and I don't think the public should have to submit a records request or send an email to find out who showed up and who didn't. So I'm asking you to do a more transparent method of if you're going to do the cancellation notice, put that information in the notice, or develop some kind of transparent system so that we can see which of our officials is showing up to do their job and which ones are not. And also, since you seem to be cutting time frequently and also combining public and member comments, I'd like to see the rest of my time now to Mayor Jones should she need it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Dr. Bilash, who will be followed by a virtual speaker, Mike Bullock.
Good morning, committee. Thank you once again for being here and taking my comments. Timothy Bilash. I am in Mid-Coastal and Mid-County, San Diego. This week, something came to my attention, which has actually been on the radar, but kind of muted. The U.S. government, through one of its agencies, is building 2 border walls across Freedom Park. And I've never been there, but I looked it up on my travel website. Apparently, it's a tourist destination. And the way the border wall is currently is that people can talk back and forth between Mexico and the United States, apparently. And the apparent plan that was hatched under the previous Trump administration is apparently being put in place to build 2 walls, one of them 30 feet high in that area. Now, I don't know the details, but I do know that SANDAG is working on other border crossings and that this issue should be a continuous problem. If there's any way that SANDAG could see to combine this issue with a secure border, I would appreciate that. Vargas was on television in terms of talking about this, Congressman Vargas, and I really don't want to see more taxpayer dollars going to controversy. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to state for the record that Councilmember Burkholder for North County Coastal is now present. Our next speaker is Mike Bullock, who will be followed by the final speaker, the original draw. Mike, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Chair and members of the committee. Mike Bullock, Oceanside. CARB's latest scoping plan was released in December last year. It is a shocking dose of reality. So please consider putting its conclusions on your agenda for discussion and possible new directions to your excellent executive director. You need to understand what it's saying and understand why it needs to affect your actions there. California's first climate mandate is to reduce emissions to 40% below our 1990 level, and that is by the year of 2030. CARB's scoping plan, the whole purpose of the scoping plan is to show how California can meet its climate mandates. So it calls for a 25% reduction per capita and per capita driving by 2030. For your 2021 regional transportation plan, CARB only required a 19% reduction, and that was for 2035. So the new scoping plan reduction is 30% more, and it's 5 years sooner. It states very clearly that we must have priced parking and a road use charge as soon as possible. Let me repeat that. It states we must have priced parking and a road use charge. It's the only way you're going to get that reduction in driving. Now, if we've thought about this, we know that the state road use charge should be means-based, and it should.
Thank you. Your time has expired. Our final speaker for non-agenda is the original draw. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know why you guys are starting out speaking in Spanish and then doing English afterwards. It's a bit weird. But, you know, last time you guys had a meeting, I tried to speak on an agenda at the end and you guys didn't even call on me. So you sit here and you talk about wanting to hear people, then you need to let people all speak, and cutting down their time to a minute is ridiculous when you're talking about such heavy weighted things. And, you know, I don't understand, Nora, because in your budget for the Board of Supervisors, you guys are adding electric fleet vehicles to your fleet of cars. And in the stuff you do here, you're talking about, that's not even going to put a dent in it. So why are you even spending on money on those types of things when you guys don't want anybody to drive in the first place? And, you know, you're sitting here doing stuff on the 15 freeway, supposedly adding a lane, which you took a lane away, which is causing more traffic and congestion, which is causing more greenhouse gases and a carbon footprint. So why are you pretending to add a lane there when you're saying that you need to actually reduce the lanes? Is this all to, you know, act like you're doing work? Because you have the signs up there that say, you know, your tax dollars hard at work, but nobody's actually working on that part of the freeway. So what is actually going on? You know, all of the stuff that you guys do contradicts within itself, because you'll say we need to do this, but then we're going to buy electric vehicles even though we're not supposed to be driving. And you sit there and you say you want to hear from people, but then you shut them up whenever they bring, you know, up anything that dissents from even wanting to pay a vehicle miles travel tax or even talking about it. So, you know, you guys are just, everything you do is BS, and you're full of it because you don't really care. And yeah, good luck trying to destroy everything.
And that concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Are there any member comments? And just a reminder, I'll go ahead. A reminder that we are not during executive committee. We don't use this. So if members of the executive committee want to speak, just, you know, raise your hand and we're good. And then also at one point, because the meetings had been, there was so much happening that we needed to address some of the issues very quickly at the beginning. Member comments had been moved to the back, but I just want to remind everyone that member comments will be at the beginning of the board meeting. Member comments for non-agenda items will be at the beginning of the meeting so that everybody is prepared for that and that we'll make sure that everybody has time. So Mayor Jones.
Thank you so much, Chair. And I wanted to thank you again for making sure that that was added back into the agenda, being that it wasn't at our last Board of Directors meeting. And for the record, I was actually at I had RSVP'd and I was planning on coming to the regional planning meeting that was not, that we didn't have quorum for. I wanted to bring up something just for increased transparency. And that is, you know, looking back, trying to find agenda items, things that we voted on when we voted on them. We're not able, the agendas don't go back past 2020. I don't know if that's actually going to be fixed so that we can go back. What I was specifically looking for was delegated authority, and just based on what we have currently seen in the latest audit, and I haven't gone through the entire thing, but we clearly have an issue there. And so I would like for us to revisit that. I believe it was sometime in 2019 that we changed that. I feel like it might have been November, December timeframe, but I would like to go back and figure out if that makes sense anymore and revisit that. I would like to bring that back if we could do that, because I feel like we need to have greater authority here at the board level and make sure that everything that we are approving is something that we do agree with, especially because we're spending a lot of taxpayer money on things that maybe don't make sense. So anyway, I would like to make
Happy
sure.
to go back and look at what the actual policy was created, and then figuring out when in the executive committee we bring it back. Not sure if it has to be something. I don't know all the details of the why. And so instead of just handing it over to council right now, what we'll do is I'll take that item, we'll bring it back, I'll discuss with the team, and I'll come back and share with you sort of where we're at. And then also, I think, I'm not sure if it's best practices. I don't know where that particular issue came up. At the time, I was only chair of transportation. So I'll go back and look at that. Happy to do that.
Yeah, and then also about getting everything online, because we also use Granicus at the city, and right before we switched to Granicus here at SANDAG, I was talking to a staff member, and my apologies, I don't recall who it was. It might have been Robin actually. Anyway, oh no, actually, I think it was Jack Christensen, who's no longer with us. But anyway, so when we talked about that, he said that the search engine would be much more robust. We'd be able to actually look back and find our votes. Because if we can't find it as board members, even though we remember voting on something, it's very
Yeah.
difficult for the, transparency for the.
All right, and then in the meantime, what I'll do, I'll ask the team to follow up and give you the specific one that you're
Right.
looking for as we figure out what the policy is, so that you have whatever it was that you needed to look at.
Wonderful. Thank
All
you so
right.
much.
You got it. And then non-member comments, I wasn't going to speak on this, but because one of our folks spoke about it, I'll just let you know that I think particularly the delegation, the congressional delegation being led by Congressman Juan Vargas, myself and other folks in the region, we have been very vocal with the administration about the power of Friendship Park and what it means to our region. Friendship Park was opened up by not a Democrat, a Republican. It was a bipartisan effort many decades ago, and it has been a jewel for South County. And so we want to make sure that for safety reasons also, because as you know, and you've seen the editorials on the Union Tribune, and I've actually written about this, right? People jumping from the 30 feet or so wall has really created a lot of challenges. And so for us, it's a humanity issue. It's an issue of collaboration. And so we're going to continue to advocate on that. If at some point we need to bring in the SANDAG, we will. But honestly, we have been really working on this issue as a South Bay delegation. I'm happy to share that information with you. Rosa from my team can help you and provide you more details on that. Okay. All right. Any other member comments? No. All right. Seeing none, we are going to go ahead and now we're going to move on to consent calendar. Colleen, do we have any updates on the draft agendas this week?
Yes, Chairwoman, thank you. We do. So one update to the agenda for May 26th, item 9 that's listed as the FY 2022 audited annual comprehensive financial audit report for other financial and compliance audit. That is going to be pushed to a future meeting because the auditors are not yet complete with that work. So with that change, all of the other items are accurate.
Okay.
Thank you.
Did you? Go ahead. Any, so with that, are there any public comments on the agenda, Tessa?
Thank you. I have 2 public commenters for agenda item number 3. The first is Dr. Bilash, who will be followed by Mary Davis.
Thank you once again, Committee. Timothy Bilash, Mid-Coastal and County, San Diego. I'm not sure I quite understood that, which item is being pulled and if there's an appropriate place to bring this up. I do have the pleasure of attending audit committee meetings and they are working so hard. You guys need to know that and tell the board. I appreciate their efforts. One of the items that I believe was passed by the executive committee a few months ago, I don't have clarification, was the continuation of the terms of some of the current members to complete the work that they're doing relative to the independent audit or other issues. And I'm not sure that was presented to the board or whether that's done or whether that's going to happen. And I would request that that be added as an agenda item, perhaps even if it's possible at today's meeting or the appropriate times for that, or if there was some additional information or explanation that might be helpful, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Mary Davis.
Hi, Mary Davis again. I just wanted to ask that you please go ahead and add a second member opportunity to comment at the end of the meeting. It's frequently helpful. Things have happened. Maybe they aren't going to talk exactly about something that happened, but it's a jumping off point. And we deserve representation. We deserve to have our representative voices heard. And I want to hear their thoughts. And so I'm asking you to please at the end of the meeting, add that member comment opportunity back in. Thank you.
That concludes the public comments.
All right, any member comments on consent item? With the changes that had been made? If not, is there a member that would like to make a motion?
Chair, I'll move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Oh, well, actually, can we call the roll?
For the consent agenda, City of San Diego, Vice Chair Elo Rivera,
Yes.
County of San Diego, Chair Vargas,
Vargas, yes.
East County Mayor Vasquez,
Yes.
North County Coastal, Vice Chair Hebner,
Yes.
North County Inland Mayor Jones,
Jones, yes.
South County Councilmember Cardenas,
Yes.
and that item passes unanimously.
Thank you very much, everyone. The next item on the agenda is the waiver for independent performance auditor employment term limit. I'm going to turn it over to Chair Cito. And again, thank you for all of your work and the committee as well. So please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Guess I'll start with a comment on a little bit of levity here because given the lack of comments of my immediate neighbors, I think I'm okay, but just wanted to apologize for any olfactory distress that I might cause today, given that my dogs on Wednesday morning decided to do battle with a skunk and I think I lost. I've been trying to make sure I'm not trailing the remnants of that with the
I honestly was sitting here thinking, what?
So, I think I'm good
smell
now, but
anything.
just in
I have
case somehow-
allergies, so I don't smell anything.
don't feel free to let me know. But anyway, I do want to thank the committee and the chair for bringing this item forward expeditiously. Another, I do, and I also want to thank Vice Chair Drucker for presenting the item at the last meeting. I do think maybe in the future, when I want something to happen quickly, I will go on vacation and hand it over to the vice chair again. But during the last meeting, we did present an update on the auditor recruitment process. And one of the items that came up was feedback from all of the recruitment firms that indicated that we were getting feedback that the 2-year term might present an issue with respect to how likely we were to attract good candidates. And this is because of a couple of factors, one of which is the independent performance auditor is not a common position. So if you want someone to move into the area that might be coming from a long distance, it can be challenging to attract them if they think they may not be able to be there for a long period of time because there aren't a lot of other options in the area of a similar type position. Also, as we're well aware, SANDAG is a large, complex organization, and it does take time to come up to speed. And so we thought it would be helpful to do that as well, if you're going to allow for more time for that as well. Given that, I had asked staff to look into some of the other area regional positions, and in the San Diego area, there are I know of 2 independent performance auditors at this point, City of San Diego and the Port Authority. Both of those terms are 5 years. There are other internal auditor positions which have terms of varying length with respect to auditing type positions. But I do know that the last meeting Pam had mentioned she would be doing some research and provide some context from the perspective of the firm as well. And think it might be useful to hear from her on what she's found. But I do think I appreciate this being taken seriously. 3 years is helpful. If it were to go back to the audit committee and a recommendation were made, I think the audit committee would probably recommend something more like 4 years or even 5, just to give it a nice, solid chance of attracting real good quality candidates. But I'd be curious to hear what Pam is inputs as well at this point. Thanks.
So,
Yeah.
Chair Cito, I actually think that all of us as a board agree. I mean, I'm making an assumption here, but I'm happy to make a motion to support this item.
Yeah.
I think we heard from the experts and during the last meeting when they were presenting, and we heard from other folks as well. Unless there's something that you want to add, I'm happy to make a motion to move this item forward. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second. All right. Now let me go ahead and have public discussion, and then I'll have member discussion. Go ahead.
Thank you. There are no public comments on this item.
May I make a comment? Stuart Halper, I'm on the audit committee.
You're not making it under public comment. You're making it as a member of the committee, so you don't have the 2-minute time limit.
I appreciate that.
You're
Thank you so
welcome.
much. And I also serve on the subcommittee relating to the independent auditor recruitment. With regard to, and we appreciate moving forward the extension of the term. The question about the 3-year term, Chair Zito pointed to the other most comparable positions. We did discuss this at the subcommittee for recruitment. Frankly, I think, and I'd be happy for Pam to weigh in as well, I think there was a consensus that 4 might be a better time frame than 3. I guess I would bottom line it this way, which is to say, what would be the risk of it being 4 as opposed to the risk that a shorter time frame may not be sufficient to compel a potential out-of-town candidate to take the job?
So, Mr. Halpert, I think that for purpose, I really love the discussion, and I'm happy to have that discussion as part of the bigger policy conversation. I think the item that is before us right now is a 3-year initial term, which is the recommendation that was presented to the board of directors. And so for purposes, I think people can also make the argument that sometimes if I remember correctly, having served on audit committees and having been the vice chair of what was it? No. When I was at CalSTRS, I was the vice chair of the actual organizational management piece of the work. And I remember that the power of the transition of not only the independent auditors, but also of the members was that fresh eyes and the fresh look. So I think there's pros and cons to both, but the item before us is a 3-year initial term. Happy to have the conversation as we're moving forward and with the new auditor and with you as members to think about if there are any future changes. But because we have the item before us as a 3-year initial term, not sure how much discussion was had from all of you. I think it would be pertinent for us to move forward with the motion ahead, and then happy to bring that forth back to the committee at some point if that's something that is recommended not only by the audit committee, but also our internal auditors as we're moving forward. How about that?
I appreciate that. Just one final comment. It's not clear to me where the 3-year recommendation came from, because that is actually not a recommendation either from this recruitment subcommittee or from the audit committee.
Yeah,
but
I appreciate that. It's I think, well, okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any additional, can we go ahead to public comment?
There are no public comments.
All right, any additional member comments?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, after hearing from a member of the committee that is one of our residents, not an actual elected official, and then also and no offense by that, sorry, Mr. Halpern, and then also from our chair, I remember when I was discussing this, I said 3 years because I thought that's what they had actually recommended. But hearing the conversation today and hearing from Chair Zito, I actually would like to make a substitute motion for 4 years. I think I want the highest quality of person. I think as all of us as board members, I think we want to make sure that we're finding a quality candidate, making sure that we are not leaving anyone out. If they're thinking, again, back to the recruitment, being that it could be we get someone outside of the area, if they don't think they're going to stay here very long, I could see that would be a problem because the cost of living is very different here. So anyway, my substitute motion would be for a 4-year term.
Mayor Jones, for purposes of collaboration, and I think we've done a good job of working together and moving forward our agenda items and in the benefit of the agency and the institution, would you be amicable in moving forward with a 3-year initial term and then having the opportunity to come back and extend a year if we needed to? I mean, we've done it with our current auditor and giving her an extension in terms of having, we can always come back and revise it. I just feel like, 3, 4, 5 years, unless there's like some additional background for backup and why it matters, other than, it's expensive to live in San Diego. We want people to have continuity. I would like to be able to go back and ask the experts to provide us with actual best practices and recommendations. And it may be 5 years instead of 3 or maybe 4. So if it's okay with you, I respectfully decline the acceptance of the motion, but in the spirit of collaboration and in the spirit of being actually on the same page with you, of understanding that continuity is extremely important, I would like us to make sure that we don't just table this item, but that we actually ask the staff to come back and make recommendations about what is the best practice in terms of internal auditors, 3, 4 years, 5 years, and then provide that feedback back in the next a couple of months. I don't know what the, maybe Pam, you're able to tell me how long would you need to do an assessment to give me back information about what the best practice is, and then we can move forward with the 3 years today, and then come back and as a board, just make that extension.
We could certainly be ready to do that at your next meeting.
Fantastic. And that way we could just move forward with this process. And then you come back and if there's any addendums, we'll make the addendums executive committee. Are you okay with that?
So just to be clear, so we are moving forward. So you're saying with the 3-year, but we want them to come back at our next executive committee meeting next month. And then we would be able to make that change. But we will be able to go outside or start the recruitment process of getting the pool, but also knowing in the back of our mind, if we get some great candidates that are saying, hey, you know what, I can't come for less than 4 years, letting them know that we are going to be making. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I would accept that. Thank you so much, Chair.
You're welcome. Yes, sir.
Yeah, thanks. I just want to say thanks. It's good discussion and appreciate the input. And I think this will just be very helpful to know as candidates that apply that we're willing to look at this and willing to talk about doing what's necessary to recruit the best candidates. So that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So got some work to do, ma'am. All right, we got a motion and a second. Please call the vote.
City of San Diego, Vice Chair Elo Rivera.
Yes.
County of San Diego, Chair Vargas.
Vargas, yes.
East County, Mayor Vasquez.
Yes.
North County Coastal, Vice Chair Hebner.
Yes.
North County Inland, Mayor Jones.
Jones, yes.
South County, Councilmember Cardenas.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Great. Thank you very much. Our next item on the agenda, and thank you, Chair Zito, for all the great work that you're doing and the committee, Mr. Halpern. It's really, really, really important. And so I also understand that Pam Derby, our recruiter from CPS HR, I wanted to say thank you to her for all of the work that has been done. Let's see. The next. Yes, hold on one second. I just want to make sure I don't forget anything. At the last SANDAG board meeting, we expressed interest to be involved, and I've asked Pam to send the job announcement to all of us before the position is advertised. And so as mentioned last time that she was here, there's going to be an opportunity to have a conversation with Pam to input for candidate profiles. So all of my colleagues will be able to ensure that we have a process where all of you are included. And I think that really makes a big difference for all of us. The next item is item number 5. I'm going to turn it over to Susan and Colleen. And if there's anything else that you'd like to add, please let me know. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Susan Huntington. I'm SANDAG's Director of Financial Planning, Budgets and Grants. Today I'm joined by Melissa Kofelt, our Director of Organization Effectiveness. We're excited to be here today on behalf of the entire SANDAG team, requesting you recommend that the board adopt the proposed fiscal year 2024 program budget. Today's the culmination of months of work, both internally and externally with our stakeholders, member agencies, and you. I hope that you're equally excited to support putting this comprehensive work plan into action. Pending the board's adoption today, this will complete our meeting schedule on the fiscal year 2024 budget. We started this journey back in February with the executive committee, where we sought input on the programs, projects, services, and activities that SANDAG intends to carry out in the coming year. In that discussion and then discussions on the draft budget in March, also with the Social Equity Working Group and the Board of Directors, we provided an overview of the agency's various responsibilities that are mandated by federal and state law or regulation or delegated to SANDAG through local agreement. Following the executive committee's authorization, the draft budget was distributed to our member agencies, the public, and our funding agencies for comment back in March. So over the last 6 weeks, we've received comments from our funding agencies that have been incorporated into the final budget. Pending adoption by the board, the budget would be distributed to the Federal Highway Administration, the Federal Transit Administration, Caltrans, and SANDAG member agencies. The approved budget is required for the federal and state funding agencies to allocate funds to SANDAG projects and for local jurisdictions and the transit operators to receive their Transnet pass-through revenue. So just to begin with, I want to point out that there are no major changes proposed in the final budget. The final budget very closely aligns with the draft budget, which we presented back in March. We've made some refinements to project schedules in the capital program, so that shows a decrease within fiscal year 24. However, the multi-year capital budget has increased as a result of successful grant awards secured since you were presented with the draft budget. The bottom section there, the Transnet revenue, just want to point out that the revenue for the Transnet is consistent with the Transnet estimates that were approved by the board in February and used for the draft budget. So there are no updates to the pass-through amounts planned for the local jurisdictions or the transit operators. And given the unprecedented local sales tax collection, the allocation to our local jurisdictions is the highest it's ever been. So just to go over what we have presented previously on the budget, and you also have at your desk a budget in brief, which shows some details of the budget. It's a $1.2 billion budget. Nearly half of that is for the capital program. Roughly 20% is that lightest pink piece at the bottom. That's the pass-through amount, $237 million. Going for local jurisdiction, local street and road program infrastructure and transit operations. Over half of the revenue used to support the three major components of the budget, the OWP, capital, and operations, comes from outside sources, the federal and state. Most of these are dedicated grants for specific work and specific projects. Transnet sales tax only accounts for less than a quarter of the revenue we use for our projects. Also in March, we provided opportunities for the board and the public to learn more about the status of the agency's priority projects, as well as the diverse and important work SANDAG is involved in, which will create impact around the region, both at your board retreat and as part of a special workshop during your regular board meeting. So within our capital program, significant work will continue in fiscal year 24 on our regional priority projects, including Losan, Otay Mesa East, and the airport transit connection. In addition, SANDAG is leading several initiatives focused on mobility options, safety and access. The Youth Opportunity Pass is fully funded for youth 18 and under through fiscal year 24. We've also started the planning work for the Blue Line Express and San Ysidro Mobility Hub, as well as the new Purple Line Rail Connector. We're continuing investment in upgrading our toll facilities and looking for efficiencies and process improvements on the toll. The budget also includes funding for public safety efforts at SANDAG through the ARGIS and Criminal Justice Division, including services provided to local cities in the county. Internally, the strategic initiatives reflect the projects that staff are undertaking to improve internal agency operations, and resources have been incorporated into the fiscal year 24 budget to support these efforts. Examples include implementation of the new ERP system. This will replace several antiquated systems for core agency functions such as accounting, budgeting, payroll, and human resources. And we are also increasing and expanding training and development for employees. So we have had a few changes between the draft and final budgets. They're fairly minimal, and I'm just going to run through them at the high level as the details have been provided in your packets as attachment 2. So the overall work program budget, the dollar change was $2.2 million. It was a 2.3% change. Within the regional operations and services, there was some refinements there as well. That went down by $2 million. Within the capital budget, this is where we talked earlier that 17 million was pushed out from fiscal year 24 into 25, but the overall multi-year budget increased by $127 million. Most of that was coming from adding back in projects into the final that we thought would be completed in the current fiscal year that we needed to add back in for final closeout activities for next year. And then we were able to add some funds to the Otay Mesa East Port of Entry, University Bikeway, and Bayshore Bikeway. Now I'll turn it over to Melissa.
Good morning. And in addition to the information that Susan's provided about the agency programs and projects, I wanted to take just a minute to highlight a couple of elements from our administration and personnel budgets. So our administration and personnel expense, our administration budget for next year is approximately $29 million, or about 2.5% of the total proposed budget. This includes $750,000 for board-related activities, as well as about $1.4 million for staffing the Office of the Independent Performance Auditor. The balance is allocated to labor costs, operating expenses, equipment and supplies, as well as consultant and vendor services that we use for agency operations. And the key changes between the draft and final budget includes an additional $50,000 for executive search services to conduct the IPA recruitment. We've also taken a look and slightly reduced the funding for IT maintenance costs. Moving on to the personnel budget, I'm sure you can appreciate that attracting and retaining talented employees is critical for any organization's success. That also is true here at SANDAG. We have approximately 420 full-time employees, as well as 30 to 40 interns, and staffing needs are evaluated on an ongoing basis. In developing the FY24 budget, positions and staff hours are being strategically allocated to priority areas, and staff have determined or proposed the addition of 8 new positions. These align to new funding sources, for example, the LOSAN realignment project, and tie to agency priorities, the strategic initiatives that Susan just mentioned, including supporting implementation of the ERP. With respect to compensation and benefits, several recommendations have been included in the proposed final budget to ensure SANDAG maintains a competitive program here. These recommendations include a 3% market-based increase to the overall salary range structure. These are not increases in pay to employees, just the structure itself. We've also proposed a 5% compensation adjustment pool that would be used to provide 2% cost of living adjustments to eligible employees, and then the balance of that pool used to provide merit increases to employees based on the completion of their year-end performance evaluations. The total cost of that 5% compensation adjustment pool is just under $3 million. In addition to these 2 changes, additional $175,000 has been included in the benefits budget to help offset anticipated costs to employee health insurance benefits for next year. So with that, and to wrap up here, recommendation before you today, the Executive Committee is asked to recommend that the Board of Directors adopt Regional Transportation Commission RTC Resolution number RTC-2023-05, adopting the final FY 2024 program budget. So thank you, and Susan and I and our colleagues are here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. We're going to go ahead and go to public comment, and then we'll take member comments. But I do want to say thank you for all the thoroughness and the work. I know the CBO working group was very engaged in this process, the member agencies, the funding agencies. And so I know what it takes to put a budget together. So I just want to, I really appreciate your thoughtfulness, especially with the economic forecast that we have, you know, that's sort of glooming over us as well. So thank you for that. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Tessa for public comment.
I have 2 public comments, both virtual for this item. Mike Bullock, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Board. That was a fine report, and it reflects the direction that the staff has received. And that's means that you're not doing what must be done based on the CARB scoping plan, because our first mission really is to achieve the state climate mandates, because human survival requires climate stabilization, and those mandates are supposed to reflect what's required on the part of the industrialized world to support climate stabilization. So we can't just be ignoring the fact that the Air Resources Board here in California has determined that we can't electrify fast enough. It makes a statement very clear about that. And it talks about very large reductions in driving. And how are you going to get very large reductions in driving? And I'm talking about 25% by 2030. How are you going to do that? And CARB knows, and they state very clearly, you're going to have to do priced parking. And there's nothing, you know, you are acting as if none of that matters to you. And it's reflected in the budget there. There's nobody working on managed parking. What CARB is saying is it needs to be widespread. But you need to start somewhere. You could start with your own employees. I've only run this by one person who does car parking vending, and that's Keith Jones, and I'm batting 1,000. He understands the system and he wants to do that system, and it increases fairness, and we have to do that. So that needs to be in the budget.
Thank you. Your time expired. Our final speaker is the original draw. Please go ahead.
Yes, I don't consent to you spending any money to put us in 15-minute cities. And what I'm wondering is, you talk about, the forecast of us and all the, financial difficulties that people find themselves in and will be finding themselves in even more as things progress. But how does that fit with you wanting to tax people and charge people more to drive? Because the only way you're going to get them not to drive is by literally forcing their hand, by making them pay even more than they already are now just to be on the road. And what is going to happen when there's truck drivers that have to deliver food? So then they're going to charge more just to get a product to somebody. So everything that you're doing is actually perpetuating the problem with the financial system and areas that are affecting people. So you're like making it sure that you're going to put them in even more dire straits than they already are. So, you sit here and you act like you want to help. I mean, you'd rather help the environment that is self-healing and, not acknowledge all the things that are being done to the environment to actually cause problems. But it's not the people, it's not us breathing, and it's not even the driving. If you even got people to stop, it's not going to change things. Things are still going to progress. And, so it just doesn't make sense that you sit here and you're like talking about something that's going to happen, and you're going to ensure that people are having an even harder time. So, what are you going to do about that? I mean, you're putting people in a very bad predicament, and you're making us pay to do it. So, are you just going to wait until that time comes and then pretend to mitigate it? I don't know, but it's very foolish what you're doing when you claim that you care about people and wanting to help them, because all you're doing is pushing a UN agenda.
Thank you. Your time expired, and that concludes the public comments.
Thank you. Any member comments? All right, seeing none, is there a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to move the recommendation, Chair.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Go ahead, ma'am.
My apologies, Chair. So I do have a few issues with the budget on a few different things. First of all, we never actually voted on the priority projects, and right in page 19 of the budget, it's saying priority projects, which we never actually voted on. And I did actually bring this up previously and said, when are we going to vote on this? I thought that I recall we actually were supposed to have this come back, that we were going to prioritize the projects the way that we want to have them prioritized. The other thing is that there was another change that actually wasn't noted in the presentation, and that is work in the work element, the Central Mobility Hub and connectors. It's allocating another $1 million. And I did speak to Ryan yesterday from SANDAG staff about this. And what he said is this is going to be for more studying. And I said to him, well, we've already allocated for the Central Mobility Hub. I thought it was $20 million. And he said, oh, it's actually $40 million, which I do recall now that conversation, which of that 20 or that $40 million, we have spent about $26 million, $26.4 million, and we have no work product. We're spending a lot of money on something that we haven't prioritized as a priority project as a board, and taken a vote on that. And we don't have any work product. And then it actually says on that new page, which wasn't noted, that given the change, the justification, given the change, this is on, by the way, 223 of the new agenda or the new budget, not the one that we actually had printed out previously. It's not in there. It says, given the change in and location for the Central Mobility Hub from Navor to downtown San Diego, which we haven't even voted on that either. And so again, asking for another $1 million on something that we already have, $40 million. And actually, I take that back. It's actually more than $40 million because apparently we also allocated nearly $3 million, $2.92 million from legal settlement to be appropriated to that as well. So we've got nearly $43 million that's allocated toward a central mobility hub that we have never actually voted on and prioritized. And we have another $1 million that we want to put toward that. I don't really understand what's going on here. I'm certainly not going to pretend that I am an auditor or anything like that. But as a person that's on this board that's trying to make an informed decision, and I'm finding these numbers here and there and all of that and all these different I don't know what's going on here.
So,
I'm very
Mayor
confused
Jones,
by it.
so I just want to clarify something, and I'm going to ask the team at SANDAG to clarify this for me. So this is because I think process is extremely important, right? And president is extremely important. So my understanding is that for the way things have worked in SANDAG, it doesn't mean that it's the right way to do it. And maybe what you're bringing up is that in the future, we should have like an actual, how do we prioritize projects, et cetera, et cetera. I know we had those conversations during the retreat. We had very thorough conversations about what our priorities were, what we all thought as a board in general thought it was. But my understanding is that the way these projects came before us is based on direction, input from the board through the regional plan, the RTIP, and the budget process. It's how these things get prioritized. And that's how it's always been. Now, I'll say this to you. I have served on numerous boards and committees where somebody telling me this is how it's always been done is not the right answer. So for purposes of this discussion, we have a motion and a second. Are you comfortable with moving forward with these initiatives? And then as we are continuing these programs and discussions, that we actually create a process as we're moving forward because at this point we've had information from the CBO working group, the member groups, the funding agencies, the staff. And I wish there would have been a space where I know you had brought it up before, but my understanding was that folks shared that this as the process is how it's always worked. Again, it doesn't mean that this is how the process should work moving forward. I'm happy to have that conversation as an executive committee and as a board to say, moving forward for next budget agenda, what we're going to do is we're going to actually add more time into the process. And what we're going to do at the retreat, right? So next year will be my second year as board chair, is that we make sure we create a clear process where everybody is going to, as a board, make a decision about what these priorities are. Number one. Number two, a lot of the projects that are in here already are projects where there are MOUs, there are contracts, there's liability. And Susan, feel free to correct me if that's wrong, right? Things that are like, we're just kind of owning them because, if it were up to me, I would be like, let's prioritize Iso Mesa, right? But I think this board and the previous board made very clear decisions about what these projects and these initiatives were going to be, hence why they're before us. And so I want to find a good balance about how we move forward. And I can't take responsibility for what past chairs or committee members have done, but what I can do is, as the chair now, is take responsibility of how we move forward. And so not sure if that's a good compromise or not, but for me, I think it's important that because there's been so much input, because there's been so much work, and because these are the priorities that have been created for all of us as a region, I feel like we should move forward with it. It doesn't mean that we end the discussion here. I think we continue to have conversations and we move forward with the process. I don't know, how do you feel about that?
So, the priority projects, there are 6 of them. And one is in the build stage, which is the Del Mar Bluffs, which we know is an issue. I think that should be a priority. And I don't think there's anyone on this board that would not go along with that. Then you've got the design at the Otay Mesa East Port of Entry, which for our goods and services huge, very important. But then when you look at the airport transit connection, central mobility hub, that's plan. You've got smart connections plan, blue line plan, purple study plan. There is nothing in here that is for East County or North County specific. I mean, you know, some of these, maybe the smart connections, which I have issues with that because that's a conversion to toll roads. I have a problem that as a region, we have not voted on these projects. We are pushing them forward and saying, well, you know, it's just kind of happening. It's way, and I'm certainly not faulting you. And Chair Vargas, I want to give you the utmost kudos for you're trying to be inclusive. You're trying to move us forward in a process that does bring everyone together. But I can tell you when we are spending, again, let's just go back to the Central Mobility Hub. We've got $43 million on that one project that we haven't even prioritized. And then we're trying to put another $1 million into it. And there's no justification of why that would be, being that we literally have no work product. It's just kind of floating around, but it certainly isn't in North County. It's again being allocated to San Diego, you know, Central.
Yeah.
We're all paying into, and we all have needs for our roads and whatnot, and our transit and everything. So for me, I have a problem with this, and no, I can't compromise on this today.
So I just wanted to, you know, first of all, appreciate your comments and really appreciate what the chair said also, because I know in previous years, this whole concept of the Central Mobility Hub, we didn't know where the location was, and it was all of a sudden announced it was one thing, and none of us were really happy about hearing that announcement. And so I think this $1 million that's in the budget right now that you're discussing as a point maybe of your contention is something that is in response to our concerns, because it's actually taking a look at planning, like where is it going to be? We've got this airport transit connection that clearly a city of our size, a transit connection that includes the coaster, which would connect with the Sprinter, impacts all of us, but that the central mobility planning $1 million is something that's going to help us to identify where is this going to be? Because we don't know where it is yet. So that's sort of the first step in responding to the board's concerns. That's the way I see it. I could be wrong. Maybe staff could correct me, but the way I see it is that this is us. The budget is responding to what our concerns were about the kind of mix up about what's going on with the Central Mobility Hub.
Maybe staff could actually help me find this in the actual budget. The $43 million that we have already allocated toward this, 42.92. Where's that? Where is that in the budget? On which page?
I recall that there was 26 million and
that we spent
and we didn't have a location. So we were all upset about it. And so that what we did was we then directed staff, like, look, we really need to have the board be involved and find the right location. So let's turn it over to staff and see if
sure, I can make a couple comments here, Mayor Jones, and thank you, Mayor Huebner. I'll be very brief. And then if you want more information, the project director for this project can answer some questions, Ryan Kohut. So there's really two places, and it's what Mayor Huebner said. So the $1 million is do the planning to determine the correct location for a central mobility hub.
But what's the 26 been? I guess
that has been the airport connection. So that's where we've been working with the airport, the Port of San Diego, to look at how do you actually make a connection into the airport with an airport connection. So that's the CIP project that's listed in the budget. So that's where the majority of the funding has been spent, is what would that alignment be? What are the different alternatives to how that could be constructed? And then there's a report that's actually planned to be brought to you this summer, where we go through, okay, here now we've done all of these different options to look at how that airport connection can be made. And this is really assisting the airport authority as part of the mitigation for the large improvement at the airport. So that's where the bulk of the funding has been spent. I do know that we've provided in past reports a breakdown of how 20 million has been spent. The report that will be brought to you this summer will show how the 26 million has been spent on that airport connection. And then again, this $1 million that we have is cost savings from a number of planning projects at the corridor level to really try to hone in, because everyone's asking, Is this at City Hall? Is it at the bus stopover? And the importance of a central mobility hub where everything comes together, where the poster and the red line and the blue line, the purple line, all of these transit pieces come together in a central location in the region is critical for the success of mobility. And so that's really what the planning effort will do. Recognize you may have questions about priorities and all of that, but that's what is laid out here in the budget.
So out of the $43 million, 42.92, whatever we would want to call that, we've already been doing some of the planning of trying to figure out where that's going to go. How is it that now we still have money left in that? How is it now we have a new charge? And by the way, not to beat a dead horse, but our audits have shown that our contractual services are an issue. Okay. This is for a contract. This is contracted services, another 1 million, when we already have 43 million that we've spent 26.4, whatever it is, million. I'm uncomfortable the way that we're shifting money here, shifting money there. It feels very wrong. And I guess as a board member, I want to see Central Mobility Hub in the budget and everything that's been allocated to that, whether it's an airport study or whatever, but it has to do with the Central Mobility Hub. This is everything that we're spending.
Mayor, I wish,
that makes
with all due
sense.
respect, I wish you would have asked for all this stuff before the executive committee. And maybe if you did and they didn't give it to you.
I have been trying to,
Okay,
I've been
so next
trying to
time
get
I'm
to the
happy
bottom
to
of
help,
it.
but let me turn it over. Do you have anything that you want to add?
And for Ryan, he was fabulous yesterday, and he's, been trying to answer a lot of my questions. I guess probably a big part of what my issue is as a board member, I can't even go back and find past information.
Yeah, no, but I think here's the other thing, right? We don't have to agree on what we agree on all the projects, and we all know how to think that these
Well,
are
we
all the
need to take a
priorities.
vote on it,
However,
yeah.
But if you have questions, those questions should be answered, right? And so I'm not sure what happened and how you didn't get all these answers beforehand, because I think we should all be able to be prepared with all these questions that we have. That's why the board meetings, the packets go out sooner. But do you want to, anything you want to add, sir?
I think I build upon what Colleen said earlier. I think a lot of the confusion comes from, the way we described the CMCP. We recently completed a comprehensive multimodal corridor plan for what we call the Central Mobility Hub. But really what that is, it's not the actual project. It's not a building. It's a way of looking at that central area of downtown or of San Diego, which includes downtown. It includes the Midway community, Old Town, parts of Point Loma, and really looking at how we make the regional connections that are described in the overall regional RTP in that particular area. And so that the recently completed CMCP for that area really looked at that area east of the airport, the connections into Midway. The funds, the $1 million that we're talking about here is to expand and build upon that planning effort, to really look at how those connections can be made and threaded into downtown, looking at the regionally significant highways, major roads, transit corridors, active transportation, how that can, really be brought through and into downtown to help people move through downtown, into downtown. And, part of that will inform the future 2025 regional plan. But of course, as we figure out what those connections are, that is going to help us understand what the potential or the opportunity for the project of a Central Mobility Hub, which is a physical, construction project to link together all those assets. And that's the bigger $42.92 million budget that we're talking about. So I think a lot of this confusion comes from the fact that these two, a planning effort and a project are, have a very similar name. And so, they kind of get looked at the same way. So
let's make sure that we clarify that. And I think as we're providing the information to board members within the budget, that is distinct, I think, so that there is no confusion of what the agreements have been from the beginning. I think that's a really good way to move forward. Vice Chair. Vice Chancellor, do you want to see that?
Yeah,
Sorry.
it's okay.
Old life.
Yeah, that's our old life. One additional clarifying question. I think that there's additional confusion. The difference between the airport connection and the mobility hub, the central mobility hub, they may occur at the same place, but they may not as well. And there was a time where those things seemed very much linked, but they may not be linked. And so drawing the distinction between what is specifically for the central mobility hub, what is for the airport connection, or perhaps both, I think would also be helpful in understanding what is being spent where. So there's the project side, there's the planning side, and then there's what we are planning for and what project is being considered as well. Can you help separate out those two concepts as well?
Yes. And, when the Central Mobility Hub project was originally created back in September of 2019, it was, that project was defined by a subcommittee of this board, the Airports Connectivity Subcommittee, and they made recommendations as to, how to solve that transit solution. And they said, we want a central mobility hub with an airport connector. So when that CIP was set up, that was the goal of the overall project. I think that structure does kind of create confusion in that you have two big elements, a mobility hub and an airport, transit line that are, not necessarily linked. And so I think that causes us to trip over ourselves a little bit.
So additional clarity on
that,
would, I think, be helpful for everyone on that, because these are enormous projects that have regional impacts. But if it's difficult to understand, what is being spent on what is being planned for, whether it's specifically the central mobility hub or the airport connection, it can start to feel like we don't know what's being spent where, what work is actually being completed. And I think just some more specificity on that would be helpful. The last thing that the last thing I'll say is this. I understand that these projects are occurring within the city's boundaries, but they are not just city. They do not just benefit the city of San Diego. And I think most folks recognize that. If I were to ask my constituents what their top priority would be, it would not be a central mobility hub or an airport connection. But I understand that there's a regional benefit. And so that's part of what happens here at SANDAG is we are looking at the region as a whole. And I think that part is important to keep in mind, especially as we're making the decisions around the overall budget. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And I think what I'll say is just a reminder, right, that this budget, to your point, and thank you, Ryan, for your time and for your thoroughness. And I think we'll follow up to make sure that it's very clear and distinct on how we're presenting some of this information. So there is, so that there's transparency, of course, very, very important. But I just want to remind everyone that this budget that everybody has worked on really represents over 200 projects that support the region, to your point, Vice Chair. And it's really important that everybody is reminded that it actually went through each of the cities, right? It's a pass through of the cities and the county and transit agencies. And there was a lot of community input in this process. So I don't want to negate any of the concerns from our board members, but we do have a motion in a second. We're going to bring this up again during the board meeting. And so with that, I would like to call to question the motion. And so there's a motion in a second. I'm going to ask board members to vote, and then we're going to move forward.
Thank you. I would like to clarify, the motion was made by Vice Chair Elo Rivera, and Vice Chair Huebner, could you confirm you made the second?
Yes, I can confirm that.
Thank you. For item 5, the proposed budget, City of San Diego, Vice Chair Elo Rivera.
Yes.
County of San Diego, Chair Vargas.
Yes.
East County, Mayor Vasquez.
Yes.
North County Coastal, Vice Chair Huebner.
Yes.
North County Inland, Mayor Jones.
Jones, no.
And South County, Councilmember Cardenas.
Yes.
That motion passes with 5 yeses and 1 no.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda was our government relations team, SANDAG legislative policy activities. I'm going to go ahead and table that for the next meeting. With that, I'm going to, before we end the meeting, I want to make sure we have any public comments that were already on the queue.
There are no further public comments.
Any additional member comments? Seeing none, thank you. We're going to go ahead and conclude the meeting. We're going to take a 5-minute recess so that all of my colleagues can move forward, and then we're going to go ahead and start our next meeting. Thank you.